How Saul became Paul, the shocking truth behind Christianity's most epic transformation. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie golden hue over the dusty road to Damascus, a path that would mark the most incredible turnaround in history. Paul, once Saul of Tarsus, a brutal enforcer hunting down Christians with a fervor, was about to face an unimaginable fate. Can you imagine the tension? A man who breathed threats, his heart beating like a war drum, suddenly struck down by an unseen force. This wasn't just a moment, it would change the course of faith forever. On that fateful day, Saul's world was an oppressive weight crushing down. His mind raced. He was fueled by anger and conviction, convinced he was doing God's work. But as he swung his head toward the blinding light from above, he felt his heart drop, a cold, paralyzing fear wrapping around him like a vice. This was no simple fluke, it was a cosmic clash of wills. The bright light crackled with energy, piercing through the heavy shadows of his life. Saul, a man of power, was brought low, high hopes tumbling down into the dust. His companions, once his allies, now stood in stunned silence, eyes wide and mouths agape, no words escaping, as if the very air had been stolen from their lungs. What was happening? As Saul's knees hit the dirt, the unthinkable voice roared, "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" It echoed, booming, questioning, relentless. His blood ran cold. He knew in that instant, with gut-wrenching clarity, that everything he believed was about to change forever. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Back to the road. In the blink of an eye, the vibrant life of Saul was thrown into chaos. Blindness enveloped him like a suffocating fog, he trembled, hands shaking. What was happening? The bewildered disciples led him, a broken figure shuffling into the unknown. Murmurs of fearful curiosity floated through the crowd. "Is this the man who terrorized our people?" whispered a voice. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and hope and dread danced in the air like flames, teasing the very fabric of belief itself. As night fell, the weight of his past closed in, but strange whispers of a new destiny hummed in the back of his mind. What was this beautiful purpose waiting to bloom amidst such darkness? Somewhere in those shadows lay the seeds of transformation. Saul's journey was spiraling into realms beyond understanding, awaiting the moment his eyes would open, and he would finally see the world differently. But what would he choose? Would he embrace the profound path laid before him, or remain shackled as the man he once was? Only time would reveal the ultimate truth. Saul's heart raced as he stumbled blindly forward. The sounds of the bustling city echoed around him, shouting vendors, laughing children, and the distant cries of animals. Yet, all he could hear was the pulse of his own heartbeat, a furious rhythm that matched the chaos in his mind. Everything felt surreal, a cruel joke played by fate. He, the hunter, now hunted by an unseen force. "Saul! Stay close!" A familiar voice called out, harsh and tinged with fear. It was Judas, one of his companions, desperately attempting to guide him. Yet, that voice grated on him, sharp like shards of glass. "I can see!" Saul shouted back, though he knew it was a lie. He couldn't see anything, only darkness, and the terrifying uncertainty that resided within it. They entered a secluded space, far from the prying eyes of the bustling market. Stumbling against the rough wall, he slid down to the ground, gasping, struggling to breathe. The cool night air hit him like a slap, bringing with it an unsettling clarity. The voice from the light echoed in his mind, hammering against his skull, questioning everything he had believed. "Why are you persecuting me?" A rush of anger surged through him, twisting his insides. "Who are you?" he shouted into the night, his voice cracking with defiance. Reveal yourself. But silence answered him, a haunting, suffocating silence that enveloped him, tighter than the darkness that stole his sight. As his companions stood at a distance, uncertainty flickering in their eyes, a figure approached from the shadows, a tall, gaunt man with a kind face, his expression filled with compassion and determination. "Saul," he said softly, yet firmly. "I am Ananias. You need to listen to me. Your life has changed forever." Saul quivered at the sound of the name Ananias, a believer, a follower. Realization hit him like a wave, this man was one of the very people he hunted. "Get away from me!" Saul barked, panic clawing at him. "What do you want? Have you come to gloat?" "Gloat? No, my friend," Ananias replied, kneeling, his eyes filled with warmth. "I've come to heal you. God has chosen you for something great. You must open your heart, Saul. You are no longer who you once were." Saul scoffed, wanting to lash out, but the pleading look in Ananias' eyes made something inside him stir. A flicker of hope, buried deep, began to rise. "How can I trust you?" he asked, his voice low, trembling with frustration. "Because I've seen the vision. I know the truth," Ananias insisted. "You've been transformed for a greater purpose. The light, it has blinded you, but it also has given you a new sight." The tension around them thickened, as if the very air held its breath. Saul's pulse quickened again. What new sight? What greater purpose? Ananias continued, "Let me help you. Let me show you." With hands steady, he reached out. Tentative, Saul hesitated, but something compelling forced him to take a breath, to inch closer. Could he dare to hope? Could he trust? Just then, a thunderous roar erupted outside. Hunters had found their prey, shouting, ready to unleash a storm. "Saul! We must go!" Judas yelled, panic rising. Saul gasped, "No. Wait. What am I supposed to do?" Ananias' gaze locked onto his, unyielding, filled with an urgency that felt as heavy as the darkness still clinging to Saul. "You will know. When the time comes you'll have to decide. Now, follow me." But could Saul truly leave everything behind? Would he step into this new life filled with uncertainty or cling to the ravenous anger that once drove him? Time seemed to stretch thin in that moment, the walls closing in, darkness swirling around him as the fate of his soul hung precariously in the balance. What choice would he make as everything he knew began to unravel? The storm loomed ever closer, and within it lay the unsettling truth of what he had become. The walls trembled as the shouts of hunters grew louder. Saul felt the creeping dread curl around his spine, tightening with each heartbeat. Everything he thought was solid now felt as fragile as glass. He could hear the pounding boots of the men approaching, echoing in the alleyway like war drums. Would they recognize him? Would they see the shame written all over his face? "Saul! Please!" Judas's voice cut through the mounting chaos, filled with raw fear. "We can't stay here." But could he abandon the very essence of his past? Would he leave behind the anger that had always fueled him? "Follow me," Ananias urged again, eyes locked onto Saul's with an intensity that pierced through the fog of doubt. "Trust me. You are meant for more than this." For a split second, the tumult outside faded. Could this man actually offer him a way out? Salvation? Or was this just another trick to ensnare him? Saul's mind spun, battling too many thoughts at once. Hope flickered like a candle, trying to push back the dark that threatened to swallow him whole, but just then, a crash jolted him back to reality. The hunters were in the alley, voices rough, wild, hungry for blood. Cain, their leader, had a reputation for being merciless. Saul had once respected that ruthlessness. Now, it felt like a knife pressed against his throat. "Saul! Where are you?" The voice of Cain, filled with venom, sent a chill down Saul's spine. Ananias stood firm, his presence now a surge of unexpected force. "You must decide now." He shouted above the din, the panic in his voice rising. You can either keep running from your past or embrace your future. Saul's heart pounded louder, drowning out all other sounds. The hunters were closing in. He could almost sense their breath on his neck. Would he choose to run back to the life he had known, the life where he hunted, where he was the one who cast fear? Or would he step into the unknown, into the light trying to break through the fog around him? Make your choice, Saul. Ananias urged, desperation lacing his tone. Torn between two worlds, Saul stood frozen. The memories of his past flooded back, friends killed, families shattered. But beneath it all, festering like an open wound, was a deep-seated rage against the believers who spoke of compassion and mercy. And here was one of them, offering him hope, or was it a trap? Saul! Judas shouted, gripping his shoulder tightly. We don't have time. Caved in on all sides, Saul felt the world collapse. Panic surged as he glanced at the frantic faces around him. He had fought all of his life, but now, those battles felt meaningless. What was the point of it all? What legacy did he want to leave behind? With a jolt of clarity, something inside him snapped. I will go with you. He shouted, the decision tearing from his lips like the roar of a wounded beast. But I swear, if this is a trick, this is no trick, Ananias rushed to assure him. It's the beginning. Before Saul could breathe, Ananias had already drawn him forward, pulling him deeper into the shadows. The hunters roared outside, their angry shouts mixing with the clatter of feet, betraying the hunt like wolves on a scent. Suddenly, they reached a door, heavy, ancient wood, shadowed by vines. Ananias pushed it open with a mighty shove, the creaking hinge sounding like a scream in the night. Together, they slipped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. A candle flickered dimly ahead, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. Behind them, the storm outside erupted, filling the air with the scent of rain and danger. Do you feel that? Ananias whispered urgently. The storm of your past is breaking, Saul. But even as the words settled, doubt began to creep back in. What awaited him inside? Safety? Acceptance? Or more storms brewing from within? Saul couldn't shake the feeling that his choice had only opened the door to a greater reckoning, and then, before he could fully process it, the door behind them slammed shut, echoing like a thunderclap. What have I done? He breathed, fear creeping back into his chest as he faced the unknown darkness. Ahead. As the candle flickered and shadows danced ominously, a new voice emerged from the room, deep and resonant, filled with authority that sent shivers through Saul's bones. Welcome, Saul, the voice welcomed him, laced with both promise and threat. Your true journey begins now. What awaited him in the depths of the shadows? And in choosing to follow Ananias, had he truly left his past behind, or was it just the beginning of a nightmare he couldn't escape? Saul's heart raced as he tried to piece together the disjointed fragments of his new reality. The voice that called to him seemed to vibrate within the very core of his being. It was neither familiar nor foreign, instead, it felt like an echo of something he had always known but had long forsaken. Who are you? He managed to force out, his throat dry, words crackling like kindling. The shadows shifted and from them emerged a figure cloaked in deep blue. The candlelight danced against the fabric, giving the man an almost ethereal glow. He carried an air of undulating power, confidence fluid in his movements. The night is cloak and dagger, Saul, the figure replied in a voice that held the weight of countless storms. But in darkness, truth can be found. Enough riddles. Ananias interjected, stepping slightly forward, his voice tremulous yet steady. We don't have time for games. The hunters are searching for him. We must silence. The figure's command sliced through the air like a blade. You brought him here for a reason, Ananias. He deserves to know why. Saul's instincts roared. He should flee, back toward the door, but it was already too late. The hunters were out there, circling like vultures, but what this strange man had to say loomed before him like a tempest. Curiosity clashed with fear. Why am I here? Saul pressed, gripping the fabric of his clothes with clenched fists as a mixture of anger and anxiety coursed through him. What do you want from me? I want nothing, Saul, the dark figure replied, stepping closer, the shadows parting reluctantly. But the world demands something from you. It's time to confront the man within these fractured walls. Something broke loose in Saul at that moment, a crack in the armor he wore. You think you know me? You have no idea of the blood on my hands, the lives I've taken. I am not the man you think I am. That is precisely the point. The figure drew nearer, the candle's light illuminating piercing eyes deep with a haunting sorrow. You are a reflection of your past, yes. But that man does not define you. You hold the power to shape who you become. Saul's chest tightened, the weight of those words pressing down. And what if I refuse? He challenged, chest heaving. What if I don't want to change? Every choice has a price, the figure said softly. But denying who you are means losing everything, Saul. You can flee from your past or transfigure it into purpose. One path leads to destruction, the other to redemption. The storm outside roared in agreement as thunder cracked overhead, shaking the walls around them. Rain lashed against the ancient door, an ominous reminder of what awaited if he decided to run. The darkness in his heart clashed with a flicker of hope, leaving him restless. From behind him, Judas whispered, barely audible above the din, "Please, Saul. We need you. You need you." Saul felt the pull, the weight of decisions crashing into him like waves against a rocky shore. But could he truly embrace redemption? Or would he spiral down into the abyss he had once inhabited? The figure stepped closer still, the candlelight casting shadows over his face. You may call me Barnabas. I am here to guide you forward, but the choice lies solely in your hands. With that, he extended a hand, inviting Saul into an uncertain future. Saul's heart ached with indecision as he stared into the depths of Barnabas's eyes. What lay beyond that inviting hand? Would it mean turning his back on the rage that had once defined him? And then, out of the silence, a distant shout echoed, breaking through their tense standoff. Saul! We know you're in there. Open up. The hunters were drawing nearer, their voices hot with malice. Saul's breath hitched as realization dawned. His time was running out. Did he choose to trust, to leave behind the darkness of his past? Or would he let fear reign, sealing his fate? The choice hung in the air, heavy as rain. He could either step forward into the light, wrestling with the shadows of his old life, or let the darkness swallow him whole. In that moment of suspense, Saul knew the answer would define him forever, but what if the very stepping stone to his future was also a potential trap? As the voices outside escalated, he felt the weight of every gaze resting on him. Could he, in that one crucial moment, take the leap into the unknown? And just as he opened his mouth to speak, the door shuddered violently against the force from outside. The old door rattled violently, splintering the tense atmosphere like shattered glass. Saul hadn't taken a single step forward yet, but the reality of his moment struck him with all the ferocity of the storm outside. Saul! Came the voice again, insistent, pulling him back to the chaos beyond the door. The hunters were relentless, their threats seeping through the cracks. You can't hide forever. He felt a surge of panic rise in his throat, tightening like a noose. Adrenaline coursed through him, fueling his desire to flee. Every instinct told him to run, to save himself, to escape the clutches of both the past and the encroaching danger, but Barnabas stood before him, unwavering. The deep blue cloak framed his silhouette, hinting at wisdom and resolve. Do not let fear control you, Barnabas urged. The only way past this is through it. Embrace your fear, face it. Saul's heart pounded. Could he really confront what lay beyond the threshold? What if the truth out there is worse than I imagine? What if his words faltered as he remembered the shapes and echoes of his past? The pain and anguish he caused reverberated in his mind. They can only take from you what you allow them to, Barnabas said softly, his gaze steady. But if you stay hidden, you will lose the life that awaits you. That door is not just an exit, it's a choice. A thunderous crash jolted Saul from his thoughts. The hunters had begun to break through. Their laughter mixed with gruff voices set his teeth on edge. Are you ready for what's next? Ananias' voice was a fragile thread, filled with both fear and fierce loyalty. Saul looked around the dim chamber. Judas's face bore the weight of uncertainty, concerns etched deeply in his eyes. This was his family, his only connection left, and here he stood, paralyzed by indecision. Trust him, Saul, Judas pleads. You have to step forward. We all believed in you for a reason. The door splintered further, pieces flying like shrapnel across the room. In that moment, when chaos threatened to spill into his new reality, something shifted within Saul. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The raging tide of despair momentarily receded, making way for a flicker of courage. Was this what Barnabas meant? Could he truly be more than his mistakes? Was there a path to redemption hidden beneath the aggregate of his dark actions? You can do it, Saul, Barnabas encouraged, voice calm, inviting. Step into your purpose. Something cracked open in him. The old Saul was gripped by shadows and pain, but the new Saul had a flicker of light. He reached for Barnabas's hand, feeling the warmth radiate from the figure, and the moment he grasped it, he felt himself pulled into a maelstrom of energy. The voices outside grew louder, drowning clarity in a cacophony of madness. Saul's thoughts raced as the door creaked and splintered alarmingly. The figure of Barnabas remained steadfast, blocking out the encroaching chaos. Together, we will face this storm, Barnabas said, a fierce determination sparking in his voice. Just as Saul felt the first surge of resolve, the door burst open with a roar. Saul! A figure emerged from the rain, wild-eyed and frantic. It was Paul, a specter from his past, yet undeniably a part of this moment. Their eyes met, confusion and fear swirling as an electric charge pulsed through the air. Do not let them break you. Barnabas shouted, fierce conviction filling his tone. Hurry! Ananias urged, the urgency in his voice igniting the room like a powder keg. Saul's heart raced with a mix of fierce hope and sheer terror. He took a deep breath, releasing his past with the air from his lungs. In that fleeting moment before chaos engulfed him, he made his choice: would the future bring salvation or annihilation? He couldn't look back now. The hand of fate gripped him tightly, but would it guide him or crush him beneath its weight? As the shadows surged forward, Saul braced for what came next, every breath a gamble as he stepped into the unknown where everything he feared waited to meet him head-on. The storm outside raged with a primal intensity, the wind howling like a wounded beast as Saul stood at the threshold of a new reality. The door gaped open, revealing swirling figures, shadowy and wild, like phantoms spiraling from the depths of his past. Paul's frantic eyes locked onto his, a raw plea hanging in the air. Join us! Paul shouted, urgency thick in every word. They're coming, and we need to move. Forces unseen beckoned to Saul, an overwhelming mix of dread and desire crashing over him. Barnabas' grip tightened. Do not let their fear seep into you. It's time, Saul. Saul felt the air shift, charged with an electric pulse that danced along his skin. Behind him, Ananias gripped Judas's arm, both faces twisting in apprehension as they watched this pivotal moment unfold. But could he choose a path to salvation when his heart still bore chains of regret? Salvation. The notion sparked flickers of hope within him, and for the first time, he questioned his worthiness. Would he break under pressure, or could he rise, emboldened by the love of those around him? He inhaled sharply, gathering the strength enveloping him. Step back. A dark voice commanded from the shadows, slicing through the determination. A figure appeared behind the swirling horde, face obscured by the gloom. Let him come to us, Paul, the intruder growled, a twisted grin shadowing his features. It was Cyrus, the most relentless of the hunters, a manifestation of all Saul had fled from. With a jolt, Saul recoiled, memories flooding back painful flashes of scorn and betrayal. He recalled endless nights spent dodging those darkened corners, sensed their presence like a shadow trailing behind him. Now, the shadows bore teeth, threatening to snap shut around him if he faltered. "Saul, please." Paul's voice wavered in desperation. "We can fight them together." Rising, Saul faced the chaos, the truth of his past simmering just beneath the surface like a tempest. He understood it now. The pain that sought to consume him could also ignite a fire. A fire that might burn away the fear, but then the swarm surged forward, a tidal wave of fury and confusion. With each step they took, Saul felt the ground beneath him tremble. The weight of their hatred bore down on him, the howling wind drowning Paul's plea. "Listen." Barnabas's voice cut through the clamor, grounding him. "Freedom lies beyond this moment. Embrace who you were, but do not let it define who you will be." The fervor in Barnabas's eyes ignited something deep within Saul. He felt the flickering flame of courage flicker brighter, illuminating the shadows threatening to swallow him whole. He opened his mouth, the words escaping like a broken dam. "I am not my past." The words crashed against the wall of chaos, stunning those around him. The air stood still for a heartbeat, heavy with the intensity of his declaration. Would they believe him? Yes. Ananias shouted, his face a canvas of newfound hope. Judas nodded, encouragement glimmering in his eyes. The ground trembled again, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was resolve. Saul took a step forward, his heart racing in rhythm with the storm. His past crept into view, but he refused to flinch. The chains that had once shackled him lost their grip. "Let us do this," he roared, the words erupting as if summoned by the fury of the storm itself. He charged forward, thrusting himself into the heart of the fray, unwavering in purpose. Chaos erupted as shadows clashed against light, the air electric with defiance and rage, and Saul found himself at the center of it all. The fog of uncertainty lifted as he summoned all he had learned, what Barnabas had taught him, what he had lost, and what was worth fighting for. But even as he fought, something whispered from the back of his mind what awaited him on the other side of this battle. As the darkness closed in, Saul found himself standing on the precipice of an unfathomable choice. "Saul!" Paul shouted, barely holding his ground against the dark tide. "Whatever happens, remember who you are." And in that single heartbeat before the storm shattered, Saul realized he wasn't just fighting for his future. It was bigger than that. It wasn't just about him, it was about everyone. Would he emerge transformed, or would he vanish, consumed by the storm? The answer tangled in the air like the wind itself, leaving a lingering question twisting through the chaos. What if the ultimate battle waited just beyond this moment? The surge of chaos swallowed Saul, shadows swirling like a tempest around him. Each skirmish felt like a piece of his soul tearing away, but with every shred lost, something new and fierce ignited within. Lightning flashed, illuminating the faces of both friends and foes, revealing a landscape of desperation and fury. "Keep pushing," Barnabas roared, battling against the oppressive darkness. "If we break their formation, we can turn the tide." Saul's blood raced. He was no longer simply unit of himself. The sting of every wound, the fear of lost chances, a history he had long accepted, now spurred him forward. He felt the weight of his past, but instead of dragging him down, it propelled him into the fray. With a surge of adrenaline, he ducked under a sweeping shadow, thrusting his fist into the darkness. A sickening crunch echoed as he connected, feeling it resonate through his bones. A victory that brought little solace, only fueling the hungry urge to keep fighting. But the shadows did not relent. They pushed back harder, and in that blink of distraction, Saul barely evaded a clawed hand, meant to grasp him and drag him into the vile depths. He could hear Paul's voice intertwined with the chaos, urging him on like a lifeline tossed into a raging storm. "There!" Ananias shouted, pointing towards an opening, a narrow breach amidst the chaos, a crack in their defenses. "Saul, it's now or never!" Paul yelled, arms slicing through the gathering gloom. Saul hesitated, his heart pounding, caught between the promise of escape and the fear of leaving them behind. He glanced over his shoulder. Barnabas and the others held their ground, faces fierce and resolute. If they fell now there was no question, he had to fight. Together. Saul roared, rallying these people who had become his lifeline. Charging forth, he weaved through the shadows, ready to protect what had become precious to him. Paul matched his stride, their shoulders brushing against each other, a declaration of intent glimmering in their eyes. The fierce camaraderie fueled them, pushing them deeper into the fray with relentless urgency, but then came the howling scream, a horrid cacophony that twisted the air, sending chills racing down Saul's spine. It rose above the storm, each note sharp as daggers. The shadows seemed to part, revealing Cyrus in all his grotesque glory. He advanced, crossing the threshold between the swirling chaos and an unbroken man. Fools! Cyrus barked, a wicked smirk curling his lips. You think you can defy me? Saul's pulse quickened. It was not just a face from his past, it was the embodiment of everything he had run from. Just that moment felt suffocating, the swirling darkness whispering doubts and fears that clawed at his resolve. Stop! Paul shouted, stepping forward. He is nothing but a masquerade of fear. We stand against you. The declaration electrified the air, a powerful wave of defiance. Saul felt it too. Together, they were a force stronger than any shadow. The winds shifted, swirling around them, carrying their words like a battle cry. With lightning swirling above, Saul hurled himself at Cyrus. Every fear, every regret fused into a single, powerful intention. I am not afraid of you. He screamed, and the ripple of energy surged within him. Cyrus's eyes flared with fury as Saul closed the distance, and at that moment, the storm seemed to pause, hanging on the precipice of fate. The clash was imminent. Would Saul's newfound strength prove strong enough to conquer the embodiment of his own fears? Or would he shatter beneath the weight of his past? The answer lingered, desiring to be unleashed, like the storm raging all around them. What awaited Saul at the heart of this confrontation? Saul launched himself at Cyrus, a single flame of determination igniting his every move. He charged through the chaos, defiant toward the embodiment of his deepest fears. But even filled with newfound strength, he felt the tension tighten like a noose around his throat. Cyrus laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the jagged edges of chaos swirling about them. Brave, but foolish. He bellowed, as shadows crawled to envelop Saul's limbs, dragging down with a sickening grip. Each step he took felt heavier, as if the darkness conspired to pull him under. Saul's breath turned ragged as he locked eyes with Cyrus, whose expression twisted into something monstrous, mocking his deepest insecurities. You wanted to escape me, yet here you are, back in the fold. No. Saul gritted through clenched teeth. The shadows surged, retreating and then striking like a serpent, poised to strike at his very core. But Saul's heart roared louder than the chaos surrounding him. With a furious swipe, he sliced through the creeping gloom. His fist connected with Cyrus's jaw, sending a ripple of shock through the dark emissary, who staggered back. Feel that? Saul shouted, his voice a rallying cry. That's the taste of fear you've fed on for years. The energy coursed through him, and for an instant, Saul glimpsed the possibility of victory shimmering just out of reach, but Cyrus's laughter returned, dark and merciless. You really think you can win? With a flick of his wrist, the shadows surged forward, swallowing up any hope that had sparked within Saul. You are broken. You always have been. Saul's heart pounded. Each echo of Cyrus's words found a chink in his armor, whispering doubts into his mind. The shadows tightened, wrapping around his chest until he could scarcely breathe. He couldn't let them win. He thought of Barnabas and the bravery etched on the faces of his friends, anchoring him against the tide of despair. Fight! Saul, fight! Paul's voice sliced through him like lightning, filling the void with a surge of fresh resolve. In that moment, he realized the shadows weren't the only things he had to face. Believe! He shouted again, and he felt the warmth of their shared struggle ignite within him like a wildfire, with a primal roar, he pushed back against the dark tendrils that sought to pull him under. Saul struck out again, this time harnessing all his pain and fear into a single blow aimed straight at Cyrus. The impact resonated like a thunderclap, and he saw something shift in the darkness, a fracture spreading through the shadows. The wind howled, carrying the sound of crumbling fears into the storm. Yet the road ahead looked treacherous. Cyrus staggered but quickly regained balance, his rage boiling over as he lunged, claws outstretched, dripping with malice. "Your defiance will cost you dearly," he snarled, his voice thick with venom, echoing an oath of retribution. Shadows swirled violently, threatening to engulf Saul whole. Saul had come too far to turn back now. The faces of his friends spurred him on. He glanced once more at Barnabas, still fighting against the tide, each swing a testament to their collective fight. Together. We have to do this together. And just like that, Saul reached forward, grasping Paul's hand. A spark ignited between them, a fusion of courage and purpose. The shadows recoiled momentarily, startled by the light forming around them. But even as the power surged, the darkness writhed with ferocity, a warning of the storm yet to come. Would it be enough to withstand the wrath of Cyrus? The storm rumbled ominously above them. Could Saul and his friends rise above the shadows encroaching on their light? The clash loomed ever nearer, and no one could predict the true outcome of this fearful battle that was only just beginning. The ground trembled beneath them as Saul's heart raced. Time seemed to distort in the span of that single moment, both fractured and hyperreal. He could feel the heat of Paul's hand, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Together, they forged a bond that pulsed with vibrant energy, a shield against the encroaching darkness. Cyrus recoiled, his eyes widening in disbelief. "This is impossible," he howled, backing away from the light like a vampire in daylight. Shadows flickered like flames hungry for sustenance, but they hesitated, recoiling with fear. "Nothing is impossible when we stand together," Saul shouted, his voice a powerful anthem resonating with newfound strength. Every ounce of pain he ever felt rushed forward, mingling with the courage of his friends. The fractured shadows shrieked, voices crying out in torment and confusion. Just as Saul felt the warmth of victory swell inside him, Cyrus regained his composure, a sinister smile creeping back across his face. "You think you can shine bright enough to banish me? Foolish boy," he growled, his voice dripping with venom. Tightening his grip on the shadows, he surged forward, a black tide of malevolence that sought to swallow the light. The light surrounding Saul and Paul flickered but didn't fade. "We won't let you take us down," Paul cried, raising his other hand to the sky, summoning their friends. Barnabas, set on a collision course with Cyrus, felt the heat of their collective spirit ignite. The others rallied, fists clenched and voices raised as they joined the fray. "I won't let you fall," Barnabas roared, charging into the darkness, shoulders squared, eyes ablaze with purpose. Each friend added their strength, bright energy cutting through the shadows like a knife. But just as hope surged, a resonant crack echoed. Cyrus summoned a storm that prompted the shadows to pulse with pounding rage. Tendrils lashed out, each striking with the fury of a hurricane. Saul staggered, his heart rattling against the cage of his chest. Would they really stand a chance against this force of nature? "Saul!" Paul's voice sliced through again, sharp and clear as glass. "Look within. What is your truth?" In that heartbeat, clarity flooded Saul's mind. He dug deeper, reaching into the recesses of his soul. Vulnerable and raw, he remembered every moment he felt alone, every tear that had fallen. He transformed that despair into courage, a phoenix rising from the ashes. "We are more than fear. We are love, we are strength." Energy ignited, wrapping around them like a cocoon, forming a barrier against the storm. Cyrus yelled, a cacophony of rage and disbelief, as the light orbited them, pulsating wildly, drawing power from every friend in that moment. They became an unyielding force, shining brighter than the darkest night. That in one final sweep, Saul, Paul, and Barnabas surged forward, every ounce of their spirit funneled into a single beam of radiance, their united courage confronting Cyrus. Now, Saul commanded. As they released their energy, a blinding flash erupted like a supernova, the shadows screeched and writhed, slashing against the biting light, each tendril disintegrating into wisps of nothingness. But while the light burned bright, the storm gathered. Cyrus shrieked, his form flickering as he struggled against the force of their combined will. "You can't. I will never be erased." But as the last of the shadowy forms dissipated, a sudden, desperate pull tugged at Saul's core. It wasn't just a fight against darkness, it was a fight against the very depth of himself. "Saul!" Barnabas shouted against the backdrop of chaos, "Do you see? This isn't just our battle, it's yours." With a flood of emotions crashing, Saul felt himself wavering between triumph and despair. What was the cost of victory? Just then, a chilling whisper slid through the remnants of the storm, "Victory has its price, Saul, and I am still here." The shadows pulsed ominously. Could they truly defeat Cyrus, or was this just the beginning of something far darker? The last clash between light and darkness erupted in a glorious spectacle of energy. Blinding rays surged forth like a sunrise breaking through a storm-laden sky. Saul and his friends poured everything they had into this moment, their energies merging in a cacophony of hope and fear. Cyrus, a storm of shadows, howled in rage, his form flickering against the blinding luminescence. "You think you've won? This ends in despair." But Saul's heart raced, no longer weighing him down, it flew like a bird breaking free from its cage. "Listen to him!" Barnabas shouted, voice steady amidst the chaos. "You are stronger than your fears, Saul." Saul felt the warmth of his friends enveloping him. In that heartbeat, he realized, it wasn't just about him. It was about every person he once tore apart, every life he once left fractured. He thought of families split in two, of loved ones who had wept and mourned, and he felt the regret solidify within his chest, transforming into a new kind of fire, one that demanded forgiveness, one that craved to mend the cracks in the world. "I will not be defined by my past any longer." Saul's voice boomed like thunder over the raging storm. The shadows shrieked, recoiling under the intensity of his declaration. With his comrades rallied around him, their strength ignited hope within him, flames that threatened to engulf the very darkness that had sought to consume them. Every ounce of pain, every regret became fuel as he barreled forward, the surge of collective energy erupting into a vortex of light. "Together!" Saul roared, determination ringing in his voice, as he felt Barnabas and Paul beside him, grounding him, building courage in that incandescent energy. "Face it, Cyrus!" Paul shouted, the fear pouring out of him like rain in a storm. "Not today." They advanced, forming a united front, the blinding light piercing through the shadows like a sword. Each step felt heavier, yet exhilarating, like the world shifted beneath their feet. Cyrus staggered, confusion lining his dark features. "This cannot be." He snarled. "Yes, it can." Saul's breath hitched as he pushed himself further, the memories of his choices painting clearer images in his mind, the faces of those he had wronged. They surged beside him, standing as ethereal shadows of encouragement. "It's possible to rise from ashes. We will not let the storm consume us." With a final, deafening roar, Saul led the charge, releasing the accumulated power, unleashing an explosion of light that enveloped everything in its path. It was a cleansing force, roaring fiercely, shredding the shadows apart. The oppressive darkness strained at the seams, warping with each burst. Saul immediately felt a profound sense of relief mixing with bittersweet grief. This battle wasn't merely for survival. It was a reckoning. As the shadows disintegrated into mere wisps, Cyrus shrieked, losing grip on everything he represented. "No! You can't do this to me!" The darkness unraveled rapidly, and in that final moment, his figure flickered a stitch in time, ripping away to nothingness, his voice fading into the abyss. The storm outside stilled, like a world catching its breath. As silence engulfed them, Saul, Barnabas, and Paul stood in the aftermath, surrounded by radiance and a blanket of calm. The darkness that once weighed heavily on their hearts had ebbed, leaving only the warmth of their unity and the gentle whisper of hope. "We did it, Paul breathed, awe lacing his voice. Saul took a deep breath, feeling the weight that had once occupied a lifetime lift away as he turned to his friends. A glimmer caught his eye, small beams of light flickering brightly through cracks in the wilderness beyond. It's not just us, you know. It's about everyone we lost, every life we can still touch. Ananias approached, the flicker of devotion dancing in his eye. Your journey does not end here, Saul. The path ahead is yours to tread, and you will guide others to their own light. Saul nodded, heart swelling with the prospect of a new beginning. Together, they shared hope and purpose, a fire igniting anew. They stepped out. Together into the dawn, one step away from shadows toward a world renewed, vibrant with potential. As they crossed the threshold, Saul's heart felt free, unburdened, transformed into Paul, a name that resonated with promise and possibility. He had faced the storm, now, it was time to navigate the journey ahead to spread the message of hope, love, and redemption. He turned back. This is just the start, he declared, conviction echoing through the morning light as a promise made to everyone who would ever seek their own path of transformation. Now, you might be feeling inspired by this journey, and you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will lift you even higher. Smash the like button now to show your support and help feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this resolution. Don't wait even one more second to share. This is the moment to make your voice heard and spread the inspiration.